All right, I'm telling you, I had almost an ulcer from all this stuff going on. We couldn't get anything to work. It was like Satan was, and really it was just the ignorance of my computer is what it was. But it was a lot of stress for nothing. But what this is, I'm just going to tonight I'm not going to talk a lot. I'm just going to talk for maybe 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes at the most. No, it'll be like 10 minutes. And then we're going to watch, basically tonight it'll be about 34 minutes. Like each night is going to be about a half hour. We're going to watch this documentary. What it is, this came into select theaters, this is a couple months ago now. Came into select theaters, the Palladium was one of them, for one weekend, and that was it. And so many people went and watched it, they had an encore presentation the next weekend. So it's a really, really good documentary. Is Genesis history? And of course, it kind of comes at it from the standpoint of, we're bombarded every day by evolutionary thoughts. Well, a lot of us have stuff ingrained in us, we don't even know it. It's so pounded into us that the earth is billions of years old and dinosaurs are 65 million years ago and all this stuff, and cavemen dragged their wives around and beat them with clubs and stuff. All this stuff is pounded into our head so much. And a lot of things, what do you call this bone at the end of your spine here? Tailbone? That's an evolutionary name. Did you know that? Because they believed, we lost our tail over time and all of this stuff. And actually, there's this guy named Ernst Haeckel that falsified embryos inside the mother's womb and made these drawings. And he said we went through every stage of evolution as we were being born and stuff. Some of this, I'm not sure if it's still in textbooks or not, but I know 10 years ago it was. But it was proven wrong many, many, many years ago that it was false. But basically our spine grows quicker than the rest of our body when we're growing in our mother's womb. And so it appears that we have a tail, but it's actually the coccyx, that's the actual name of the tailbone. But the tailbone actually comes from evolutionary ideas. We have all of this stuff ingrained in us, and we don't even know it. It's just we're so bombarded by it. I want to look at a couple verses, and I'm just going to talk a little bit about the main reason we're doing this. I've done a couple different studies, right, on the flood and on... we looked at a lot of evidence for the flood. We're going to see some of that tonight that I didn't talk about. And then we also talked about just the existence of God. And is that rational thought, or is science and evolution rational thought? We looked at that really close a few months ago. And this goes hand in hand with it, what we're going to look at tonight. And the reason we're looking at this tonight is we want to build your faith, because like I said, we're bombarded with things that are going to bring doubts. That's what Satan's objective is, especially after you become a Christian. He wants you to make you ineffective. He wants you to doubt. He wants you to be stuck where you're at. He wants you to kind of coast through. That's where our natural selves, where we get into, we get into these ruts where we just kind of coast along and feel comfortable. And that's what he wants. We want to build your faith. None of the evidence that we see in the world contradicts the Bible. Okay, the problem is the worldview that you start with. One thing that the scientists don't understand is absolutely everybody in this world is biased, okay? Everybody has something they believe that is driving their decisions, driving the way they look at things, the way you see things. It's all driven by your core beliefs, what you believe in your heart. And when you look at the evidence, that core belief is going to cause you to see different things, and they're going to talk about that a little bit tonight. But we also want to equip you a little bit. If you're witnessing to somebody, which is very likely, that believes in evolution and is an atheist or whatever, we want to equip you with answers. And so that's what we always try to do, is try to equip you with answers that are biblical. Romans 1:18 through 23 says, "The wrath of God is being revealed from heaven against all the godlessness and wickedness of people who suppress the truth by their wickedness. Since what may be known about God is plain to them because God has made it plain to them. For since the creation of the world, God's invisible qualities, his eternal power and divine nature have been clearly seen, been understood from what has been made, so that people are without excuse. For although they knew God, they neither glorified him as God nor gave thanks to him, but their thinking became futile, and their foolish hearts were darkened. Although they claimed to be wise, they became fools, and exchanged the glory of the immortal God for images made to look like a mortal human being, and birds and animals and reptiles. They are without excuse. I talked about this before. They try to explain everything without a God. The Big Bang Theory and all this stuff. And the first thing you should ask them is, where did that matter that exploded come from? When you go down to the base of it, something has to be eternal for us to be here. Whether it's a molecule, because something can't come from absolute nothingness, okay? That's a scientific fact. And that's the first thing I always point out to somebody who's, an atheist. Where did whatever time, space, matter come from? What is eternal? A lot of times they will say the universe is eternal, or something like that. It's anything but God. You will find that out because that is not what they want. But it's kind of interesting. It says they suppress the truth. If you look at the word suppress in the dictionary, I think, I have a slide for that. It says forcibly put an end to, prevent the development, action, or expression of, restrain, prevent the dissemination of information, not let true information to get out, and things like that. This is what suppression is. They're suppressing the truth. And we're going to see even Answers in Genesis. It's a really good organization. If you ever, answersingenesis.org has tons of stuff on this kind of topic. I saw an article where there's a Christian scientist trying to do experiments on the Grand Canyon, and he was denied. They would not let him do it and all this stuff because they knew that he was going to bring out information that was contrary to what they wanted to get out. They suppress the truth. This is what the world does. Adam Sedgwick, he was one of the founders of modern geology. He said this about the reason why the theory of evolution was created. He said, from the first to last, it is a dish of rank materialism cleverly cooked up. What materialism is atheists, they believe what they can touch, what they can feel, what they can sense. They don't believe in a spiritual world whatsoever. That's what materialism is. And why is this done? For no other reason, I am sure, except to make us independent of a creator. Because they know, man, if we've got a God, I had best find out what he wants, That's what kills me the most. I've never heard anything more absurd than somebody who says, I believe in a higher power. You believe in a higher power? Well, who is he? Well, you better find out. Man, if we've got a creator and a God that put us here, you better find out who he is, and you better find out what he wants, because that is a very serious thing just to say, well, I believe in something, Well, man, you better find out, because if it's Jesus Christ, he says, I'm the only way, so that's what basically they created the evolutionary theory. And if you we're going to talk a little bit about Darwin. I'm going to try to hurry, get done here in about 5 or so minutes. But if you look into Darwin and his backstory, he actually grew up in a Christian home and all this stuff, and lost his faith over time due to death and pain and suffering that he had in his life. He lost his daughter, lost another child to scarlet fever, I think it was. He had all these horrible things happen, and it destroyed his faith because he, like a lot of other people, most of us, if we're left on our own, we like to point the finger when things go bad. We like to point it at somebody else, just like Adam did in the garden. We don't want to claim, look what my sin has done when we see death and suffering in the world, because that's the truth of the matter. Look what our sin has done. Look how horrible sin is. But we say God is bad. That's what most people say. God can't be good. No, God is good, but our sin has separated us and brought this division and pain and suffering and death into this world. 2 Peter 3, starting in verse 3, it says, above all, you must understand that in the last day, scoffers will come, scoffing and following their own evil desires. They will say, where is this coming he promised? Ever since our ancestors died, everything goes on as it has since the beginning of creation. But they deliberately forget that long ago, by God's word, the heavens came into being, and the earth was formed out of water and by water. By these waters also the word of that time was deluged and destroyed. By the same word the present heavens and earth are reserved for fire, being kept for the day of judgment and destruction of the ungodly. It says, in the last days scoffers will come, and they'll deny the creation, and they'll deny the flood. That's exactly what that says. They deny the deluge that destroyed everything. They deny that God, by his word, created the heavens and the earth. And this is, evolutionist to a T, right? This definitely fits this. They start with the assumption that the Bible is not true. That's the assumption they start with. It's the same as Greek mythology to them. And the worldwide flood is a myth. They start with that when they go in to look at the evidence. But even though the evidence of the flood is everywhere, the Bible talks about the waters of the great deep bursting forth. These fault lines that we have all over the earth are from that great deep, the fountains of the great deep that burst forth. And then all the fossils that we find in the layers, we're going to look at that tonight. They do kind of an in-depth thing into the Grand Canyon. They say everything goes on as it has from the beginning. Evolution and billions of years belief depend on this, okay? They believe that everything that we see today, the processes we see today, have always been at this rate, have always been just like this since the beginning of time. But the problem with that is, if the Bible is true, and if the flood is true, and if the world before the flood is like the Bible describes it, where people were living in 900 years and all these things, it wasn't the same at all, okay? So if the Bible is true, all of their assumptions are wrong. And that affects a lot of things, including carbon dating and radiometric dating and all these things. We're going to actually talk about that next week before we start our thing. We're going to talk about carbon dating, because what I want to do is I want to equip you with answers. If you talk to an evolutionist, one thing they're going to tell you is evolution is fact. They're going to tell you that very boldly. They're going to tell you many times, they're going to tell you carbon dating proves that the earth is billions of years old. And one thing I want to tell you is, if someone tells you carbon dating proves that the earth is billion, they don't even know what they're talking about, okay? They're just saying something that they heard, because that's not true. We're going to look at that next week. But they will say very boldly that evolution is fact, because a lot of times we'll say, well, it's a theory, it's just a scientific theory. But to them, a scientific theory is not what you think it is. If you look at the definition of a scientific theory, it's a well-substantiated explanation of some aspect of the natural world based on a body of facts that have been repeated, confirmed through observation and experiment. Such fact-supported theories are not guesses, this is what it says in the actual definition, but reliable accounts of the real world. So when they look at this is the theory of evolution, they're thinking, these aren't guesses at what's true, They're saying this is based on facts, this is true. This is just as true as gravity, which is false, by the way. But so they will, when they think of the theory of a scientific theory, they think this is fact. This is not, so when you bring that argument to them, that's what they're going to come at you with. But the problem is, that is false. The theory of evolution, as far as like molecules to man evolution, does not fit into this definition. Okay, what we see, I think the next slide is the Darwin. Yeah, Darwin, he didn't have a job. His dad gave him a job to go on this boat and to research these birds, right? And he went to the Galapagos Islands. He was on the USS Beagle, was the name of the ship, and this was in 1830 something. He went there and he killed tons of birds and then studied them. And he noticed that like those first two birds are the same kind of finch, and those last two are the same kind of finch, but their beaks are different. He noticed the beaks were different. And they had adapted to which island they were on, like certain fruits, certain foods, certain things they had to do. He noticed that they gave offspring that their beaks were a little different. From this, a lot of times the thicknesses were different also, depending on how hard of food they ate. And the difference of them was 1/4 millimeter, okay, in the beaks, thickness. So from that 1/4 millimeter, he made the jump I don't know if I don't think I have that quote. This is from The Origin of Species. He said, "It's truly amazing that all animals, all plants, and all humans are related with a common ancestor." He made a jump like that from finches that had different sized beaks. That kind of evolution, okay, there's microevolution, there's macroevolution. Microevolution is what we see here. You know, dogs bring forth a variety of dogs. Birds bring forth a variety of birds. We never see a bird bring forth a camel or whatever. You know, you don't see one animal becoming another. Not only, he takes it another step farther. He said all plants. In other words, dogs, humans, bananas, we're all related, okay? According to the theory of evolution. This is not science. That's not science. Nobody's observed that. Nobody does observe that. A lot of times you talk about the fossil record and they're talking about the missing link and all of these things. There's not a missing link. The whole thing is missing, okay? There's a missing chain. If evolution was true, we would find transitional forms all over the place, and that's not what they find at all. You'll find they do this ape to man. You'll find like a missing link every now and then named Lucy or, you know, whatever, but it's always ends up being proven wrong. Okay, they were wrong. This was actually a monkey. Neanderthal was actually a man with arthritis. You know, they were men that had arthritic problems. They found that out later. Neanderthal is not true, okay? Like all of these transitional forms that they do bring forth end up being proven wrong in the long run. But the problem is we have this taught like it's fact in our schools, and it's paid for by us. It's totally funded by tax money, you know, and it's forced upon our kids. That's the real problem. You know, if they want to believe they came from a monkey or whatever, that's up to them. You know, everybody has the right to free will. God's given us all free will. You know, everybody has the right to choose what they want to choose. But the problem is they're forcing it upon everybody else. And that's where the real problem comes in. And they claim this video we're going to watch, which I'm going to start right now because we're going to run out of time, is all Christian scientists. There's lots of Christian scientists out of there. They just battle against the world all the time, you know. They're constantly battling, trying to get their research done, a lot of times they can't publish their stuff because it gets taken out, you know, because it has to go through reviews and things, and they can't get it out there. So it's very hard to find Christian research out there among, you know, like university studies and things like that. You got to go to special Christian websites and special Christian this just to find stuff. But, you know, Isaac Newton, Galileo, Albert Einstein, Michael Faraday, many others, they were all Christians, okay? You can be a scientist and you can be a Christian. In fact, we're going to see a lot of them right here. We're going to see that evolution isn't science and it isn't a fact. It's a religion, okay? Evolution is a religion based on blind belief because we don't even see what they claim. You know, we don't see that in nature now. We haven't seen it in the past. We haven't seen one animal become another animal. You know, inside everybody's DNA is information, and, you know, the variation that we see within a kind deals with that information. It never adds information. You don't see buffaloes growing wings, right? You know, it may be hairier than other kinds or maybe longer, you know, whatever, but you never see it add information. It has limits. It can only work with the information that's already in the DNA. So evolution, absolutely, as far as like molecules to man evolution, is absolute religion. But with that, we're going to go ahead and get started, and we'll watch about a half hour of this, and we'll pick up on that next week.
Hey, this is Pastor Duncan Davis at Impact Church. Thank you for listening today. We hope and pray that today's message has impacted your life for Christ. We pray that you'll impact others' lives for Christ. Come and fellowship with us at Impact Church on Sunday mornings at 10:30. Have a great day, and God bless you.